All right. So we're recording. And again, thanks everybody so much for joining the webinar. It's been a little while since I've done one of these webinars. I've been working a lot on the upcoming conference and doing some other stuff. There's always things going on with the program. So I've been kind of putting off doing a webinar for a while, only because I wanted to try and come up with some new material for you guys. And this is somewhat new material for you. I think a lot of folks who are really familiar with our Recovery 101 training, our Peer Support 101 training, this is going to be kind of, reinforcement for what you already know. But what I've decided to do, because one of our program deliverables is to create a toolkit for employers about best practices in hiring peer support workers from start to, finish basically and beyond, is I decided to kind of retool my management training to track the toolkit that we're going to be creating. So this is this is my first stab at it, and so any comments and feedback that you have for me is absolutely welcomed. I rely on that. I want to make sure that the materials are relevant to you, and if you are noticing particular things in your workplace that you think should be covered in this training, then by all means let me know, because I really like to hear that kind of feedback and make sure that whatever I'm doing you find useful. So we'll go ahead and get started. So you guys, most of you I think know me. My name's Danielle Zavala. I'm the program director for WISE, and I'm also the associate director and general counsel for NorCal MHA. And I've worked for NorCal MHA for about 4 years. And I work in the mental health field because I'm someone who has lived experience myself. Um, I love the work that I do. I like to use my knowledge and educational background to help advance interests and advocate for folks who may not have a seat at the table. So that's about me. And just a little bit about our organization. Again, folks who know me and who have been through our trainings know all of this information, so I apologize to the extent this is a repeat for you. We were founded in 1946, so we are celebrating our 70th anniversary this year. We are the oldest consumer advocacy agency in Northern California, and we're also a peer-run organization that specifically hires individuals with lived experience. So as a peer-run organization, that means that over 50% of our staff and over 50% of our board identifies individuals with lived experience, either as current or former consumers or family members. However, in our organization itself, we have about 47, 48 employees now. Over 92% identify as individuals with lived experience, including all of our executive leadership team, all of our managers, and mostly as current or former consumers, although we do have some family member programs as well. And just so you know, I'm pretty casual about doing my webinars. So if anyone wants to interject or ask questions or provide comments, please feel free to do so. You can jump in at any time. You don't have to listen to me talk at you for this entire period.
Might not go.
So just a little bit about our program, WISE. So WISE stands for Workforce Integration, Support, and Education. As I mentioned earlier, we are a program of NorCal MHA. We are funded by the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, or OSHPD, and we are funded through MHSA Prop 63 WET dollars. So this is a statewide WET program. So what do we do? What does WISE do? We focus on genuine workforce integration through the transformation of organizational culture. So that is a lot. We recognize that we have our work cut out for us, and we understand that organizations do things the way that they do because they've evolved over time to work for them. But sometimes, especially when it comes to hiring and integrating peers in the workforce, sometimes it's not working. And so even within our own organization, we've had to look at our own practices, policies, and procedures to ensure that we are creating an organizational environment that promotes peer success. And what does that look like? How is that different for us? And what can be replicated by other organizations out there? So we see ourselves kind of as peer support for the employers because we've been there, we've been through it. We've experienced challenges and pitfalls along the way, but we've also done a lot of research and a lot of homework, and we've stuck with it over time. And so we're very, very pleased at the state of our organization now. And as I mentioned, over 92% of our staff are individuals with lived experience, and we are a very successful organization. So we are hoping that we can help other agencies out there find things that work for them. So more specifically, we provide technical assistance and training to help employers in the public mental health system. So you'll see PMHS all over in our slides, and that stands for Public Mental Health System. We help public mental health system employers recruit, hire, retain, and support consumer and family member employees, clinicians and clinical staff, mental health workers and case managers, and other hard to retain positions. So our program is primarily focused on peer integration, but we do have some funding to provide trainings and other technical assistance and support to organizations who are having difficulty in hiring or retaining clinical positions. So we look at organizational culture and work-life balance and all kinds of other factors that play into the retention of existing staff. So we're going to jump into this working in recovery part 1. So a couple of things I just wanted to let you guys know. Again, this training I've kind of reformulated to follow the toolkit that I'm going to be creating later on this year. And the toolkit is a toolkit of best practices for employers in the public mental health system who hire peer support workers. And so the whole purpose of the toolkit is really to take all the steps and all the factors that are involved from, planning the program and designing job descriptions to recruiting, hiring, interviewing, onboarding, and then ongoing supervision, performance management, professional development and growth, and addressing performance problems if and when they arise. So I'm really looking at the entire experience and creating a toolkit for the employers so that they have a handy reference for them available whenever something comes up in the process of peer employment. So I am breaking down this training into 3 parts. So 3 full different trainings. The first is looking at organizational readiness and preparing to bring peer support workers into your workplace. The second training will be more about the recruitment, the interviewing, the hiring, and the onboarding of peer staff. And then the third training in this series will be about ongoing performance management, supervision, addressing, performance issues if and when they arise, and creating opportunities for professional development and growth. So that's a lot to cover, and that's why I've decided I'm going to break it into 3 separate trainings, because I think that getting all at once would be very overwhelming and probably too much to follow. So that's what we're doing. So if you have feedback for me, keep in mind that that's the goal of creating these trainings. And so if I'm kind of straying from that goal, or you think you have some ideas that will help me reach that goal with better or faster, then by all means, please go ahead and just jump in and let me know, or you can shoot me an email or give me a phone call after this training or this PowerPoint, and we can talk about some of your ideas, because again, my whole goal is to make this meaningful for you. And what I've observed within our own organization, and what I've observed with all the other organizations that we've been working with over the past year and a half that WISE has been in existence, that might not be representative of what's going on in your workplace or your experience. So if that's the case, we want to be very inclusive and ensure that we are covering all of our bases. So your feedback is definitely welcome. All right. So now that I've given that whole big introduction, and thank you for sticking with me through that, I'm wanting to hear from you guys. What are the most important things that you think employers should know before they hire peers?
To say something, tell the employers that our condition is controlled so we can work, and I work very hard to control my condition. I'm very faithful with my medication, and I live a healthy lifestyle to enhance the work of the medication.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Absolutely. So making sure that employers understand that they're hiring somebody who is in recovery and they're maintaining their recovery. Or if you haven't hired peers yet out there, what are some things that you want to know before hiring peers?
Yes.
Nobody wants to let me know. Did I mute everybody or something? I don't know. What did I do?
I don't work right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to assume that you guys are all ready to move on, but this is really important for me to hear the feedback that you might have. So if you have feedback, please do let me know because again, the whole point is to make this relevant to you and making sure that employers are getting the best information possible. So I'll move on.
Danielle, can you hear me? It's Michael
Yes, I
Field.
can. Hi.
Hey, hi. To me, this is a two-part question.
Okay.
It's important things for the employer to know is what was shared just earlier. I might have been Laura,
Yep.
because that is certainly true, and especially if the supervisor or quote unquote employer has any biases or stigma, that's certainly important. But the other side of that, I think, is that the peer, the person with lived experience, and I'll share that I also have lived experience, is on the same page, and that both sides have realistic expectations of what's going to happen. You know, what the role is going to be, and for the employer to know what accommodations the person with lived experience might need, and for the person who has lived experience to have really thought that through, and maybe with the guidance of a mentor. I know that was helpful for me years ago, and it still is, to have really thought that through. And then I'll just add, there's another little bit of a sticky situation, because the person with lived experience may not want to divulge up front too much of what their accommodation needs are for fear of not getting the job. So having realistic expectations on both sides and together, to me, is super important.
Yeah. And absolutely, definitely. And making those expectations clear up front as well, right? And saying, okay, well, here are the expectations that I have as the employer. What are your expectations as a peer employee or volunteer? And, where can we meet in the middle to ensure that both of our expectations are being met? Or maybe I need to adjust mine, or you need to adjust yours to ensure that we're getting the job done, so to speak, right? But at the same time, being flexible and understanding that things do come up, but if we anticipate them and plan for them, then it's not a surprise. It's not as big of a deal. And I have a really good comment that somebody typed in. The peer has a special set of skills that are different than the case managers and therapists. The employer, yes, the employer supervisor should not expect the peer to do the same type of work. Absolutely, 100%. So I think that is super important. So understanding, making expectations clear and realistic on both sides. Also understanding what the peer role actually is, and making sure that everybody who's part of the team and who's going to be working with the peer understands that role and how they contribute to the team, because to me, that's part of setting those realistic expectations as well.
Hey, Danielle, it's Christy from Tuolumne County.
Hi, Christy.
Hi. I just want to go back to what Michael was saying about the accommodations. So maybe having some guidelines on what is a reasonable accommodation and what. So, like, I struggle with. I'm struggling with that right now, where someone's sort of been having some issues for the past, I'd say, 6 months now, and it's like, at what point, because I've been very flexible and working with her and trying to get everything, meet her needs, but get the job done as well. So are there any guidelines on that? On when you say, I think you need to take some time or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely, I know that's an issue, and I definitely see that being incorporated into the third piece of this training when we're talking about ongoing supervision and how to intervene if there's a performance issue or someone needs some maybe additional support when we're looking at evaluating performances and that ongoing supervision. All of that is really important. And I definitely have guidelines. I know I can offer that and provide that, but I think that is important as well, because I think a lot of employers kind of, and even our organization has in the past as well. I mean, we still sometimes struggle with it, but I think part of it was really understanding what our expectations are and making those clear up front. But we've struggled too with saying, okay, well, if somebody needs an accommodation, obviously we have to comply. We need to offer somebody an accommodation, and that's in the spirit of our organization to do so anyway,
Right.
But we also have deliverables that need to get done. We also have,
Right.
assignments that need to be completed. And how do we manage that while also remaining flexible and understanding and thinking about the impact that it's going to have on the rest of the working environment? So I think,
well, that's where I was going to go next, because some of the other peer workers have noticed what's going on with this one, and well, why is she getting this and that, and then it becomes a big hairy nightmare.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like, for us, because we are a peer-run organization, I think it's pretty much assumed that everyone in our organization, has a mental health condition or is a close family member of someone with a mental health condition. And so flexibility is kind of inherent. But at the same time, I think so it's not necessarily a big deal for us when people disclose, well, hey, I'm struggling with this, like I'm changing my medications, and I think I'm going to need some time off. But so the disclosure part isn't the struggle that we have. I think that we've had the struggle around, and coworkers will tell their coworkers as well, like, hey, this is going on for me. So if you see this happening, then that's why. So they don't have to ask, like, thinking someone's getting special treatment because the person with the accommodation has chosen themselves to disclose. But at the same time, where we've really struggled is those ongoing, outcomes. Like, okay, great. We want to be supportive to you. We want to provide the accommodation. And we will, obviously, so long as it's reasonable. But what are you going to commit to on your end to ensure that the work is getting done? What are you going to commit to so this isn't, never ending, string of like taking additional time off, or maybe you need a schedule change, because that provides us with some finality. So looking for ways that we're communicating our expectations but also remaining flexible. And I think part of it is that we just have been doing it for a while, and so it's become part of our culture. But it's really hard to make that transition and make that shift, especially coming from a traditional environment where people don't have mental health conditions for the most part, or they certainly don't disclose and talk about those issues. So anything else? Any other things? What about in the pre-hiring stage?
Danielle, I have 170 hours of annual leave, so I guess I'm not taking too much time off. In fact, my colleague encourages me to take time off.
Right, right. Yeah, and then you have people like you, Laura, and me who never take time off or hardly ever do. And then well, I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself. I end up burning myself out. But, so it's important that we look at those things too as a preventative measure because if I melt down, then this program's going to melt down and that's not a good thing. So how do we empower other people around us, but at the same time, engage in self-care and model that self-care for the folks who are working with us. That's important too. So anything else in the pre-hiring stage? If for the folks out there who have already hired peers, what are some things that maybe you wish you would have known or wish you would have done before you embarked on that adventure?
So one of the things, this is Michael in Stockton at the Wellness Center. One of the things that I think the Wellness Center has learned is that nice people don't always have the skill set that one needs to fulfill all the responsibilities of the job description. And so we've tried to do a little bit more background checking and digging in to what skill set the person brings, and an area that's real difficult to measure or to assess, but the strength of someone's recovery. Those are all really important pieces, and then even up to a couple of years ago, before we started working with you, Danielle, we weren't as clear as we are today as to what we're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. And I think that that's a huge thing. And that's something that I can confidently say that I've encountered with a lot of organizations who really want to do the right thing, but they didn't really know what they were looking for. So that's difficult. And sometimes you end up figuring it out through process of elimination, right? Well, that didn't work. So let's tweak the job description and the job announcement next time to ensure that, whoever it is that we're hiring has this skill set. Okay, well, now we're learning that this is more important. So I definitely think it's a work in progress. And I think with our organization, we've reached a point where we've got it down pretty well, but there's always room for change and improvement. And we're always learning things, kind of based on our experiences. So absolutely. And I think it's super hard because there has not been a lot of support out there for employers to figure out, okay, let's talk through these steps now. Like, what is it that you're looking for? Here's what the peer does. Here's how they contribute to recovery. Here's how you can utilize them, in a way that enhances services delivery or whatever. Are you prepared now to go and create that program or write that job description and do the hiring, in a way that promotes that vision and best practices, what are known best practices and core competencies out there. So that is really hard. And I think that that's definitely a work in progress. And that's definitely an area that I see where employers need help.
Yeah, and what we've done here in Tuolumne has been we try to, when I don't have any openings and people are interested, I try to get them to volunteer as much as possible so I can get some idea of whether or not they would be successful in the role. And also recognizing that everybody is in different places in their recovery, so we try to focus on people's strengths. So, some people will do more work on the computer than others. We try to, we have varying levels, so it's kind of nice to have that flexibility so everyone has a chance.
Right. Yeah.
I like those ideas very much. And then, one other thing that crosses my mind that I think might be worth mentioning is a person's attitude can make up for a lot of weaknesses in things like computer skills and so forth.
Absolutely.
to me, that might be the number one most important skill to me.
Yeah.
That's customer service, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Absolutely. And conversely, right? Somebody's attitude can override their technical skills if they don't have the right attitude, you know. So it kind of goes.
That's true too. That's so true.
But yeah, I mean, I think that that's important too, because especially, you know, in some organizations, the more that we grow, the more rigid sometimes our hiring standards become. Like, okay, you absolutely have to fit into this box in order to be qualified for this position. But, you know, I can tell you as, you know, part of our executive leadership team at my organization, something that we've learned a lot is that, okay, we can, if someone has the capability of learning and growing over time, and we think that that within a reasonable period of time they can get to those technical skills we're looking for, but they have the right attitude and they're reliable, and they understand, you know, recovery, and they understand their role as a peer. You know, we can work with that.
And their willingness to try new things, because we had a person that came in and never did anything on a computer, and he's like making flyers for us now, and he loves it. So even just that willingness to want to learn something new and contribute it in a different way is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. And having kind of that foundation of those kind of interpersonal skills can sometimes be really important, because and you know, Christy, as you mentioned, especially when you have a wellness center environment like you do and Michael does, you can really provide strengths-based opportunities and give folks those abilities to contribute in ways that are meaningful and utilize their skill set in the best way possible. You know, obviously different programs, they may not have that same level of flexibility, but it's such a great entry point. And as you mentioned, Christy, you know, having people come on as volunteers so you can kind of observe their working style, how they interact with others, their willingness and readiness to you know, take on new responsibilities and learn new things is a great starting point to determine, you know, okay, what is it exactly that we're looking for, and who do we think is going to meet that skill set.
Right.
Great. Thanks, guys. So yeah, definitely. And I have a private message that somebody sent, and it's private, but I'm just going to tell you generally what they said, that, you know, sometimes the soft skills are more important in a way than the hard skills, because the hard skills you can teach, but things like, you know, kindness, empathy, how they get along with other people, their willingness to try new things, you know, their capacity to take on, you know, new responsibilities, and their level of resiliency sometimes can mean more than necessarily the technical skills that they have. So that was another person echoing those thoughts that we've put out there. All right. So we're going to jump into part 1.1 now. So this is number 1, part 1, the case for peer support. And I don't really think that you guys need to know about this, because I'm pretty sure that many of you already are sold on peer support. So in this section, I kind of just lay out, you know, making the assumption that the person who's going through this training hasn't hired peers yet, is contemplating hiring peers, or they have and maybe didn't have much success. So they're thinking, you know, they're rethinking what their peer programs and positions are going to look like. So why hire peers? Obviously for leadership, it's important because there are a couple of sticks or potential sticks out there. Hiring folks with lived experience in the public mental health system is an MHSA requirement. If you receive MHSA funding, you need to have consumers and family members working in the system somewhere. So it's a requirement. Also, you know, there's been kind of a lot of discussion around peer certification. Will it happen? Won't it happen? You know, when will it happen? What's it going to look like? Those questions are definitely still up in the air. We don't have a lot of details right now. I know the bill itself is going through revisions. However, you know, assuming that it does pass in some shape or form in the future, we are going to be looking at, this job classification, especially for agencies out there who engage in Medi-Cal billing programs. You're going to want to take a look at this because now this is a new revenue source potentially. So I got a question posed through the chat function. What about organizations that don't think consumers can really work? Um, yeah, I mean, that's kind of fundamental, right? You have to believe that folks can actually work. And that's difficult. I think in this training, I addressed some of that. But at the end of the day, if people just don't believe that folks can recover, or that people who have received public mental health services can ever get to a point where they can engage in meaningful work, then I don't know if they're going to be interested in this training. I hope that they would, because I can certainly answer those things and talk about that. But that sounds like a deeper conversation, only because I would want to know why. Where is that thought coming from? Why are people feeling that consumers can't work? And what experiences have they had in the past that led them to that belief? So I can maybe help to unravel some of that. But stay tuned, because I'm going to address a little bit of that. And if I don't go into it enough, then let me know, and I'm happy to expand upon it. So we talked about this.
Hey, Danielle?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Along those lines, well, not really, of can't work or don't think they can work, but I know sometimes I run into people who have limitations on how much they can work because of the benefits that they receive. So I don't know if you're going to address that anywhere.
Yeah.
But that's something that we run into quite frequently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of address, I kind of bring it up in a roundabout way. When I'm talking about some of the challenges for employers in figuring all of this out, one of them is the benefits issue. But I think that definitely can be called out more directly and say, okay, this is something that when you're structuring your programs, in looking at how you're going to fill these positions, are you looking for somebody who can work full time? Maybe you want to balance that out with some part-time positions, instead of having, maybe you're funded for 4 full-time employees, maybe you want 2 full-time and 4 part-time or something like that, because you are going to have those occasions in which people cannot exceed a certain number of hours that they can work because of their benefits that they're receiving.
Right, and when we get into the state of California going up to $15 an hour for minimum wage, it's going to be, I'll have probably some people working like 5 hours a week, just because they can't make anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, and that's discouraging, not only for us as employers, but also to folks out there who, really want to work, but it's like they get kind of stuck in this cycle of, poverty sometimes too, because move forward, and we know that there's a lot of attendant and ancillary issues that arise when someone's constantly living on the brink of poverty. So that creates a whole other host of issues, but definitely that's something to consider and at least be aware of, because when you're designing your program and you're designing, what the requirements are going to be for that position, you want to take that into consideration, and perhaps have some resources or be able to refer potential employees somewhere where they can get some assistance sorting through all of that.
Right.
And so the person who brought up the issue about what about organizations that don't think consumers can really work, that I'm referring to mental health organizations. Same response. I mean, my question would be, okay, well, are you interested in hiring consumers and then you really believe that they can't work? Like, let's figure that out. I think that's a hard question to answer because I feel like I need some context around it. That's certainly an attitude out there. People, there are people who feel that, okay, well, if you're a current or a former consumer, especially if you're a current or former consumer in the public mental health system, there's no way you're ever going to be able to hold down a job in the future. And I'm assuming that every person that individual has encountered has fallen into that same, pattern. However, I know plenty of people from the work that I do in my organization who have been served through the public mental health system that absolutely can work and can meaningfully contribute, and they're great employees. So I think part of that would be, figuring out where that opinion is coming from, and potentially exposing folks or telling them about successes. Because, I think one of the things that happens very frequently, especially in the public mental health system, where we are dealing with often a high level of acuity, so the nature of the public mental health system, right? They have to have SMI, and they frequently may cycle through the system. It's important that we understand that when we see people, we're seeing them at their worst. And they have good days too. And if they, get the supports that they need, chances are they're able to live a meaningful life that they can contribute to their, communities. And maybe we need to look for the examples that disprove our thoughts that we currently have, rather than, assuming that everyone who has been through the public mental health system fits that stereotype. I don't know. I mean, it's hard because I don't want to, shame anybody if that's truly what they think. Then I wouldn't want to shame them, because if they're expressing that thought, at least they're open to conversation. But I guess it's hard for me to respond because I just don't know where that's coming from, and it's like a big problem to tackle if we're looking at organizations as a whole. So maybe what we would want to talk about is, look, if it's an MHSA requirement, then the law itself has determined or has made a finding that individuals who have mental health challenges can work and can contribute. So somebody in a high place, not that that always means something, right? But somebody in a high place thought that this could work. So we need to give it a shot. And then there are some carrots out there as well. So it's an effective use of organizational resources. Again, if you do it right, we know that it's obviously cheaper than hiring additional clinical staff. And again, it goes back to, if you do it right, if you know what you're doing, if you understand how you're going to structure the program. And we know that our clinicians often are very overworked and burnt out, and they don't get enough R&R. And so, perhaps rather than assuming that, we need to hire more clinicians, perhaps we can look at the use of peer support to alleviate some of that burden. We know that there is an evidence base for peer support. It leads to enhanced client outcomes, again, if done correctly. And then authentic organizational identity, right? So if you are an organization, you say, I really believe people can recover. I believe people can and do get better. I believe people who have been through the public mental health system or who have received mental health services in general can and do recover. Then what better way to demonstrate your sincere belief than by hiring people who are in recovery? Right? So that not only demonstrates to the rest of the world, no, people can and do get better, and they can lead normal, healthy, productive lives. Sorry for using the N word, normal, right? But people can lead healthy and productive lives. And I believe in that so much that we have folks here that are in recovery, and it reinforces that sense within the staff themselves. It's reminding us, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is how we're showing it. So peer support also addresses some of the limitations of the medical model. And again, this is not Bash on Clinicians Day or anything like that, but there are some limitations to the medical model. And later on in this training, I will talk a little bit about what some of those limitations are. It also gives us an opportunity to receive valuable feedback for systems improvement. Again, if we promote and support peer advocacy within our organizations, if we encourage folks who have been through the system, who have gotten better, if we encourage them to give us feedback about how we can potentially improve the system or what worked for them, so we might want to, enhance those services or enhance those practices and procedures, then that's a great way for us to get feedback from people who have actually been there as to what could potentially work for the clients that we're serving. So it's also obviously important for the peer staff themselves to get hired, right? And we know that folks who have mental health challenges, especially folks who have SMI, they have very, very, very high rates of unemployment. as a general, in a general as a large group, if we're looking across, all backgrounds, folks with SMI are at about 80% unemployment rate. And so we know it's so important for folks to have an opportunity for financial independence and for self-efficacy, right? Feeling that I can contribute, I am a valued part of this community. And we also know that working is highly correlated with wellness, recovery, and resilience, which are part of the MHSA's core values. We know that working enhances the individual's own recovery because it provides them, kind of physically with that routine, that activity. It provides them with social interaction because we know social isolation is a huge risk factor for mental illness. It also provides them, kind of psychologically with that sense of meaning, contribution, purpose, identity. So absolutely, it's important that folks who are in recovery have an opportunity to work. We know that there's a unique value of lived experience. Again, kind of talking about I've been there. So not only can I use my experience to help improve the system for everybody else, but I can also use it on a one-on-one scale, helping individuals through their own recovery because I've been there, I've experienced that. Obviously, even if peers don't stay within our organizations forever, we're building transferable work and life skills. Again, that, those computer skills, somebody came to us, they didn't know how to use a computer. Now they do, right? If nothing else, they had an opportunity to learn that skill, which they can now take somewhere else. And I'm wanting to hear from you guys. What are some other reasons why you feel that hiring peers is important to the peer staff themselves or to the employer?
From a peer's perspective, you don't have to feel like you're a lone survivor on a deserted island, because that camaraderie amongst one's peers, to me, is really important. I'd like to emphasize the unique value of lived experience.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's evidence-based scientific research on an environment like this, but there's certainly evidence-based practice that peer programs are helpful to people's recovery, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was a way to incorporate that, to me, that raises eyebrows in a really positive way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to say this a lot because I do not bash clinicians. I love clinicians. A clinician saved my life, but he also was a peer, which made a huge positive difference. And we hear it around here all the time that in my recovery, I get more out of talking with my peers or going to peer support group than I do from my quote unquote clinician or the clinician-led group support group or et cetera, et cetera. So finding a way to toot our horn, so to speak, without offending this, people, the clinicians. Anyway, I just thought that was worth saying. Thanks.
No, absolutely. And in fact, we got a comment on the chat that is very, very similar. And to me, what it really boils down to, like what is so unique about that is that shared lived experience has the ability and capacity to inspire hope in clients in a way that nothing else can. And I kind of use this example. And if Steph is out there in computer land hearing this, then she's going to laugh at me because I use this example sometimes in our trainings. But I say, and if you guys don't know Steph, she's like gorgeous, like 5'7", skinny. She actually struggles to gain weight. This girl wants to gain weight. And, I'm like the average American, female who needs to lose some weight. So I always say, look, if I want to really learn how to lose weight and get inspired, I'm probably not going to go to somebody who's never struggled with their weight. I'm probably going to go to somebody who really struggled and was able to take the weight off and keep it off, and they can tell me what worked for them, and they understand, when I have some setbacks, they can encourage me because they've been through it, and it inspires hope in a way that somebody who hasn't gone through that similar experience can't do, or is very unlikely to be able to do. Not to say they can't, obviously, but I think you know being there with somebody who has been there, done that, not only gives you hope that you can get better, but they know what you're experiencing. They know how hard it can be sometimes, and they've kind of learned those tips and tricks that worked for them, and they can share that with you. So yeah, I think it's very unique and it's very valuable. And again, I'm with you, Michael. I'm not bashing clinicians. I love clinicians. Nothing wrong with that, but it's a contribution to somebody's treatment and wellness in a different way.
And what we're doing here in Tuolumne too is we're having our peer specialist staff share at our all staff meetings, which clinicians go to, and our behavioral health workers and FSP case managers and our entire receptionist staff, everybody. And the amount of respect that they've earned by sharing their story is I can't even tell you. I mean, yes, identifying with the peers themselves, it's off the charts, but our staff really appreciate and understand the value that they bring now, because they see where they've been, how far they've come, and what they're doing now to pay it forward and to give back and help others.
Yeah,
it's really amazing. Yeah.
Right. And I think for, some of the other staff who, again, sometimes only see people at their worst, this is reinforcement that, hey, people can and do get better. And what you are doing too really matters.
Right.
It really matters. And I've been through the system, and here I am now, working or volunteering, and I'm better now. And thank you. And other people can get better too. And let me tell you how I can, help with that, or how a peer in the past has helped contribute to my wellness and recovery, So yeah, absolutely. So not just for the peer staff themselves, just obviously it earns them respect and all of that from the other staff, but it helps the other staff to feel like, okay, we're on the right track. We're doing the right thing. People are getting better.
Oh, we also had somebody speak at our Board of Supervisors last week, because we were going to have them proclaim May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And I brought a peer with me, and the Board of Supervisors was, I think they were floored and saw the value as well. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I know. It's great. I mean, I remember when I think last year when SB 614 was in one of the legislative committees, we brought a ton of we're just, a few blocks away from the Capitol, so we're really lucky in that sense. So we just gathered up a bunch of our staff and brought them all down to, testify in support of peer certification. And we had folks who, spoke a bunch of different languages, and we had them say, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a peer and at NorCal MHA, and I support this bill. And we had them say it in English and in their native language. And it was just so impactful and powerful. And at the end, even kind of the more conservative members of the committee that you would think, well, I don't know, if they're going to be on board, said, I have one question. Are these people all going to get jobs if we pass this bill? If we approve this bill? Because I'm definitely for it. And it was just like, wow, that's huge, right? That impact and seeing people, come forward is huge.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
So definitely. Okay. So for clients, I think we talked about this, right? We talked about the evidence base, and I have the, citation for where we got all of this information if anyone's interested. But in looking at the research, and people have, and SAMHSA has, they found that clients who had the benefit of peer support demonstrated the following outcomes. So reduced number of admissions and days spent in hospitals, reduced use of acute services, substance use, depression and demoralization, and reduced average service costs per person. Additionally, peer clients who have had the benefit of peer support show increased time in the community, increased engagement in outpatient treatment. So that's a big one. And we had someone comment in the chat that peers build the bridge that's sometimes lacking between the client and their service provider. So that engagement in outpatient treatment is huge. Increased active involvement in care planning and self-care, hope, quality of life, and satisfaction with life, rates of family reunification, which we hope is always a good thing, right? Sometimes families have issues, but a lot of times family members really care and they've been disconnected from their loved ones who are struggling. And also improve social functioning and chances for long-term recovery. So these are all the benefits, these individual human level collective outcomes that peers, again, if done correctly, can help bring about. All right, so that was part 1.1, and wowee. Okay, so we are at 2:54, so we are pretty much done here. So next, and at the end of this month, we'll go into part 1.2, preparing your workplace for peer success. Are there any questions or any comments or any suggestions so far? And I really appreciate everyone's feedback.
Yes.
Hi, Laura.
I've managed my recovery very well. This job enables me to stay well. It gives me structure.
Yeah, definitely. That's huge. All right. So next time at the end of this month, when we get into part 1.2, just to give you a little preview here, we'll talk a little bit about some stuff like predictors of peer success. So kind of all of the things that we know organizations that have successful peer support programs and peer support workers demonstrate these particular factors. So we'll get into all of this. Integration challenges, where assistance is generally needed. This is, I've seen some stuff in the chat box here, so this might be of interest, like some of the additional challenges, some tokenism, box checking, sometimes there's hostility, co-optation. We'll talk about all of these issues. Stigma, and then how to meaningfully prepare to integrate peers into the workplace. So we'll get into that next time. And if you have any questions or comments or recommendations, please, by all means, I'm very, very happy to hear them. Send them to me. If you see at the bottom of this, I think most of you have my email, but the bottom of this page is our WISE website. It's wiseup.work. It has all of our contact information. You can even submit an information request through the website. So if you don't already have my information, that you can find it there on the website. The next webinar is going to be, it's always the last Monday of the, oh crud, that's Memorial Day. I think what I'll need to do, oh no. All right, sorry, I'm looking, it's scheduled for Monday, May 30th, but I'm realizing that that's Memorial Day. So obviously you guys are gonna be off. Maybe what we'll do is I will do it, you guys wanna do it next Monday on the 16th? Or, oh, I see a request for June 6th. What do you guys want? May 16th or June 6th?
Looking at the calendar. It would be in the afternoon.
On May 16th, it will be at 2 o'clock or like anytime in the afternoon you guys prefer. Okay, we're getting votes for June 6th. So I do have to warn you though, I have to actually throw this little caveat out. We may have another meeting. Wait, let me see. Yeah, at 2 o'clock on the 6th. I'll bump that meeting and we'll take over that time slot. How about that? June 6th at 2 o'clock?
Sounds good.
All right.
That would work.
Okay, well, we'll talk then. And if you guys want to reach out to me between now and then, obviously, I've said it before, I'll say it again, go ahead and do so. And for the folks who are interested in the recording of this call, I believe I can email the file to you. If you send me an email, that way I have your, obviously I know where to send it. I can just respond and attach the file. And I'll also see if Ben, our superhero program assistant, can potentially upload it to our website as well. So if you want the recording, just send me an email and I will respond and get it back to you. Thanks everybody for participating.
Thanks.
Bye.
My machine.